Well, it's another Friday night, and it's time for Friday Night Photoshop. Thanks for joining me. It's always great to have you on board. Tonight, I just figured I'd talk about 5+ popular tools that I use frequently in Photoshop. And these are kind of fun tools to know and good to work with. So, without further ado, let's just dive right in. So one of the first tools I think is really cool that Adobe has put into their program, and that is sky replacement. There are some times you might have a nice picture like this, and here we've got a schooner going out. Here's Bug Light in Portland, Maine. But wouldn't it be nice to do something else with that sky? Well, you could come up here and say select sky, but instead of that, go over to edit and then come down here to sky replacement. And watch what this does. I can pick which clouds I would like to have here in the sky. And that's how easy it is. Now, if I don't like those, I can pick these, give it a moment to render. There it is. That's not too bad. There are a number of different skies that you can click here and pick. Maybe that one's pretty nice. So maybe I'll just stay with that. All I have to do is say OK. And this is outputting to layers. So now I can make some adjustments if I want. You see, we're darkening it to put up that. And we are darkening the horizon just a little bit there too. Maybe we don't want that. We'll just leave that one out. So again, there is clouds added, and it's that simple. Okay, the next one I want to talk about is, I think, one of those invaluable tools that we just kind of take for granted. And there's some people who don't even know this exists, Scrubbies. And especially when you combine it with text. So let's see what we can do with this. First, I'm going to come back here and I'm just going to flatten this image. Next, what I'd like to do is add some canvas around this. So actually, I'm going to add a layer and double click on this background. So that is a layer. And I'll put that right on top of this canvas. How big is this image? We can see this here in image size. So it's pretty small, 6 by 3. That's okay. So if I come up here and go to canvas size now, and 6, 7, 8. So if I were to go with 4 inches around that, and if I were to go with 4 inches on the top and the bottom, that's going to be 2 inches on either side. So that's pretty big. And that's fine. And I'm going to change this to black, and I'm going to make this black in the background. Now, what I want to do is put some text in here, and I need to move this picture upward. So I'm just going to take the move tool and just place it right about there. Now I'm going to take the text, and this is where I think the Scrubbies are so wonderful. I'm hitting D for default and X to exchange, so I'm now typing in white. And I'm going to go look for a font that I think will look nice here. And I think I'll just go with this one. And I will just start typing here. Okay, well, that's certainly pretty big, isn't it? So watch this. If I just wipe over all of this, I can come up here to the text box and see how the cursor goes to a hand with arrows. If I just left click and hold, I can move this down till I get the size that I want, just like that. And let's do this. We should probably call this properly what it is, Portland Breakwater Light. And I'll move it just by placing this here. And now to center that, all I have to do is take this background and highlight the top and the bottom layer, come up here and hit this little center, and that's going to, hey, I guess it was in the center. So that's good. Now I'm going to put in just some more text, and what I think I'd like to do is put in my name. But this one, I know I'm going to want this to be smaller. I don't know how much smaller, so I'll just start here. Now, wouldn't it be nice if I could stretch this out, but what I want it to do is to have the letters stretched out. All right, so I'm going to move the layers out of the way. And if I choose this tool, this is going to give me the character attributes. So now what I can do is take the letter spacing. I can either space them out like that, or, and you see I'm just using Scrubbies for this, or I can space out the letters like this. One I was squeezing, the other one I'm adding spaces in between. And I think I'd like to make this color for my name maybe in gray. And I'll say okay to that. Now the last thing it would be nice to do would be to put maybe a nice little stroke around this. And so if I come over here and choose the effects and choose stroke, maybe I'll put a nice pinstripe in white. I'm choosing white, just like that. And if I make this a little smaller, that's all I need. And I've just put a pinstripe around that. And now if I were to show you this finished image, now I should probably put a stroke around the outside, and we can do that. We'll come over here, do a Control A, and I will just go stroke. 4 is fine. Come out of this, and let's go do this again. The letter F again. So there's a really quick poster that I just created, and by using the Scrubbies, I was able to adjust the size of the lettering to make it just the way I wanted it. Now, maybe I'm not happy with this and I'd like the lettering to be more consistent with the size of the actual photo. Well, that's not a problem. If I just choose the type tool and again, wipe over this. I don't want to start a new layer. I'll just wipe over this and watch this. Just take the Scrubbies and bring it right down, just like that. And maybe I'd like to have my name be consistent with that. So if I grab this layer and move this down, remember we stretched that out. Now I don't know that we centered that layer, so let's just do that really quick. If I center it according to the actual background, I think that might move. Yep, there it did. All right. Now you see this is more in line with the edges, and I think that might just look a little bit nicer if I bring that out. So there's a quick poster. You could take any of your artwork, put it into a poster like this, and go out to a place like Walgreens, who prints posters, and make up your own inspirational poster with your own information in it, and call it whatever you like. So that's Scrubbies as it relates to text. Of course, Scrubbies are used all over Photoshop, but I think this is a great place for Scrubbies. So here's perspective crop. This is a great one if you've got, well, let me just show you. So sometimes you might have a situation like this, and you look at that sign and say, gee, that would be really nice for in a scrapbook if I could use that sign. Well, why not? Over here, we normally have the crop tool, but if we right-click, we have some other tools, and one of which is the perspective crop tool. Now, how this works is if I go to the upper corner of this graphic here, for instance, right up here in the corner, and click and hold, and draw my cursor down to the other side, down here, now I take this upper one and take this down to here, and I take this one over here and take it down to here. And now I'm going to just use this little checkbox and look at what I've just done.
That's great.
Now from here, I can go ahead and just do some tweaking. And does that not look like a postcard? And so that might make for a really nice opening to a slideshow. Or maybe this would be great if you ever do scrapbooking or if you have a photo book. this could be your opening page. And that was taken straight out of that photo. Let's do it one more time. Here I've got this sign that I could try to straighten out, but watch this. If I just come up here and click in this corner and just draw right down to this corner, now it's worth zooming in when you do this. And it doesn't matter which side you do. We just grab this handle, and I just would like to get that right there. I'm using the space bar to be able to move up here. Now I take this and put this right down to here, and double click, and voila. There we are. And of course I turned this tool on again, and I don't want that. And there we are, voila. That was just a sign that was on the side of this building. I just took a grab shot, and now I've got a sign that I could use again for a slideshow or for a whatever application I might have. So that's perspective cropping. And it's just a matter of coming over here to the crop tool, but right click and come down to perspective crop. There are a lot of tools in Photoshop that can use content aware. And let me show you a couple of fun things that we can do with it. So here's a nice shot overlooking this body of water, but we've got these telephone wires up here and some sort of a something hanging off of this. It'd be nice just to quickly be able to get rid of those. So if I come up here and use the spot healing brush, this is going to be using the content aware algorithm. And now if I just make this brush big enough, watch what happens if I just wipe over this corner. And I need to make sure to give it a little extra so Photoshop knows what to fill with. And there it is. All right, here's one more interesting use of content aware. This is a nice bush and nice blue sky, but I don't like this parking sign in here. So if I just wipe over this and give it a little bit more, watch what happens. Gone. And maybe I might have to do a little touch up in there. But you can see rather quickly, I just removed that sign. And you can do that with certain images. And it just looks a whole lot nicer than if you had that sign in there. So again, that is the spot healing brush using the content aware algorithm. This next one I have to do a little setup for. So let me just go and say new. This would be fine. We'll say create with white background. Yeah, that'll be fine. Now, I'm going to take this image and I'm going to undock this. And I need layers, so I'm just going to go hit F7 to bring out layers. And I'm going to throw this background up here and say, okay, no. Like I say, I'm just doing this really quick just to prep something that I want to show you next. And all right, there's one image. Let's go open another image. This one would be a good one. So I'm just making a quick montage. I'm just going to put 3 images out here. So I can demo something. Move this out of the way, and maybe I'll put this in here down below. All right. This should be enough. So this next tool that could seem a little hidden, but I use quite a bit, is layer style copy and paste. Let me show you how this works. Here I've just got 3 images that I put up on this canvas, and if I click on this move tool and right click, this tells me what layer is on top and what's in the background. So in this case, layer 1, I just want to move this layer over here. Next, I'm going to click on this one, and this is layer 2. So this is how I know which layer this is. And by the way, notice how it puts these nice little alignment lines in there, so I know where to align this. That can be useful. And this one, layer 3, I think I'm just going to put this like right here. Now I think I'm going to take this one and move it over here. All right. So this one is over this and it's over that one. We know that because we can look at the layers. This one here, the layer that's on the top, is over those. Now, what if I wanted to put maybe a trim on these? So on this top layer, maybe I'll come down to Effects and I'll say Stroke. And I'm going to put a black stroke on this. And I'm going to make this a fairly good size one like that. Now, while I'm here, I think I would like to put a drop shadow. So I'm going to choose drop shadow. And this is where I can choose the distance and the spread and the size and the opacity. So maybe I just want that to be like a stain like that. Now I can click on this shadow and move this anywhere I want, just like that. So maybe I'm going to put that shadow just like that. And maybe I'd like that just to be a little deeper. So now that will make this look like it's lifting off the page. But wouldn't it be nice to do the same treatment to the other two images? But I don't want to have to go and do all this to each one. Watch this. If I just right click anywhere in the effects area here, I can say copy layer style. Now I can choose this layer that's got the flower, and I can control click this layer that's got that bush, and now I right click and I can say paste layer style and watch what happens. I just put the drop shadow and the stroke around both of those, so they're just both the same. If I wanted to, I could come back to this top layer, and maybe I don't want it to be over the others, so if I just use free transform, watch this. The stroke and the drop shadow follow. Now, all I had to do is to do this once, and then I could apply it to the others. Maybe I'd like the stroke to be gray. So if I were to take this image here and click on the stroke, you see the black on black doesn't make a lot of sense. So if I just double click, and this brings up the panel to be able to change that. Maybe I'll go a little bit darker. No, I guess I like that lighter one. And I'll say OK. Now I'd like to do the same for these two. And if I just right click and say copy layer style, now if I take this layer and right click, I can say paste layer style. I've just applied that to both of them. So this is great, and if you have text and maybe you'd like to put in some words here, maybe I'll just put in the word photos. Now I'm going to use Scrubbies again because I'd like to make this bigger. And if I just go underneath, I can move this and say OK. And look at this. I can go and right click on this photos and say paste layer style. And now it's putting the same edge, stroke, and the same drop shadow behind the letters. So everything's the same. Whenever you do a montage, to make it look real, you want the drop shadows to all be in the same direction. You don't want one to be in one direction, one to be in another direction, because that's not normal. You want everything to be in the same direction. And this is a great way to confirm that. Incidentally, if I wanted to, I could come to the effects panel here just by double clicking on this. And if I go to that drop shadow, you see I've got this little angle up here. This looks like a clock. Well, if I just move this around, watch where I'm putting those drop shadows and notice that this is global light. So this is doing it for everything. So if I wanted that drop shadow to be in a different direction, I can do that just by doing that. Now, this is using global light. If I only wanted this one to be different than the rest, if I unclick that, now I can do this and make that be, to me, that looks ridiculous. So that's why I like to use the global light and have this track and show me the drop shadows the way they should be. So that is layer style and being able to copy and paste it. Did you know that you can open JPEGs into Adobe Camera Raw right from Bridge? Let's go see how that's done. So here I've got a JPEG, and it doesn't look so good. It's pretty dark. Now, it would be nice to have the raw file to be able to work with this, but in this scenario, let's say if I did not have it, what could I do? Well, if I just open this up into Photoshop, I can do some stuff with it, but I really like the editing capabilities that's in ACR, Adobe Camera Raw. So by doing a Control R, what this will do is it'll take a JPEG file or a TIFF file that you might have, and it opens it right up into Adobe Camera Raw. Now from here, I can just hit Auto and see what it's going to do for me, and then maybe I'll do a little more. Now, one thing we have to be careful of, because this is a JPEG, we don't have a lot of information. And watch what happens if I bring up this exposure. It just whites right out. In fact, if I turn on the warning function up here, you'll notice that this clips very easily because we don't have the information like we normally would in a raw file to mitigate that. So of course here I can bring down the whites and bring this up just a little bit and make that work. All right. There I can change the color temperature just a little. But look at this under white balance. I have a choice now, only as shot, auto, or custom. Those are the only choices I have. When you shoot a raw file, remember that's like bringing the whole grocery store home. You can go reshop. With a JPEG, you've thrown out a lot of those abilities. In fact, look at the exposure. If I go all the way up to a +5, it loses a lot of detail. It clips. And same thing if I go down to a -5, well, it's pretty much black, isn't it? So you have a lot of latitude because this is Adobe Camera Raw. I can still bring up the texture. I can soften this a little bit. Dehaze might be good for that blue in the background. I kind of like that blue because of the yellow. And the detail can be your friend. You'll notice that you are missing some functions here. If you just go to sharpening and bump that up just a little bit, now you can do that classic hold the Alt key down, move the masking, and look at the JPEG noise in this. You see those sways up top there that looks almost like a river? That's JPEG artifacts. And that's what you get with a JPEG image. So if I make that go all the way dark and move this noise reduction up, and if I sharpen this and bring out some detail, and I might have to go with a bigger radius, and then I will use a color noise reduction, I've helped to mitigate the almost posterization that I was getting up top there. And the last thing I'll do is just take the effects, and I do like to darken the edges. And now I will open this on the long side. I'll make that 6. And here is a processed 4x6 that started as a JPEG. Now, I would save this as something other than a JPEG. Obviously, either a Photoshop file, a TIFF file, or if you had to make it a JPEG, make it the highest quality JPEG you can. But I would also save this as a Photoshop file or a TIFF file, just so that you could go and do more with it later if you wanted. So let's talk about some bridge batch processing that we can do. And I think one of my favorite ones is batch resizing. It really can save the day because let's say you have a number of images, not too unlike what you see right here. And what if you wanted to resize these all so that they will fit properly on a 4K TV set? Now, it's very popular to take images and put them onto a thumb drive, plug that into the side of a TV set these days, a smart TV, and then you can sit and watch it like a slideshow. But if you have a 4K TV, even if you have a high def TV, it's really nice to be able to get the sizing to be just proper. So here's what I can do. I'm going to just choose images. For instance, here's this one. Here's this one. It's a JPEG. This is a JPEG, although that doesn't have the sky replacement, but that's okay. Here is a raw file. Here is a raw file. And here is one more raw file. And I can put in even one more raw file. Now, some of these raw files have been edited. This one is a raw file, has not been. So I've just chosen a number of files and I would like to make them all to be able to view on a TV. So I just simply go to Tools, I go to Photoshop, then I come over here to Image Processor. This is one of those few times in Photoshop you have to go to a menu to a menu to a menu, right? So again, Tools, Photoshop, Image Processor. And when you get here, here's what you see. First of all, I'm going to skip this top one because we're selecting images from Bridge only, which is what we want to do anyway. I'm going to just save it in the same location, although I could, if I wanted to, select a different location, maybe a thumb drive, and I could copy it all out to there. I'm going to want to convert everything to sRGB for that profile so that I know it's going to look good on the TV screen. And look at this, I can resize this to fit. This only gives it to you in pixels, so you have to do some math if you're looking to do prints. Look at what I've got in here, 2160 by 3840. Well, that's the dimension for a 4K TV. If you were doing a regular high-def TV, you'd be putting in 1920 by 1080. And that would be for a regular standard high-def TV. By the way, you can save things out as a Photoshop file, and you could come up with a different size if you wanted. And you could also save things as a TIFF file if you were so needing a TIFF file to send to somebody. And I can put in copyright information here if I wanted. At least this way we know whose image it is, right? Sometimes I'll put my email address in there. And I do want to include the ICC profile, which is going to be the sRGB. Now, all I have to do is hit run. And what this is going to do is it's going to step through all of those images and it'll open them. It'll apply whatever sidecar file I may have had for each one. It will then resize it. It will then convert it and it will save it as a JPEG. Oh, and it'll put my copyright information in there. I'm just sitting here watching it work. And when this is all done, you'll see there is a folder that's created, and that folder is going to be called JPEG. Let's go look at it. Here it is, JPEG. And when I open this, I can click on any one of these, and if you note the size, remember I was doing these for high-def TV, 3840 on the long side, 2160 up and down. So this one should be 2160 up and down, and it is. This one will probably be 2160 by 2160. This is making sure that the size doesn't go outside the box. And this is going to be the proper sizing for this. And of course, for a vertical, it's going to be 2160 top to bottom, and it'll be a lot less on side to side, so you'll have pillars. And that's what you want, because this will do it all anamorphically. And I love that about this. So there is batch resizing in Bridge. And let me tell you, I've been doing a ton of that this week. Here's one more batch process that I think is worth its weight in gold. So a lot of times we will shoot raw files, and we might not get around to processing them all, right? Well, watch this. Here I've got 4 files that I took pretty much of the same thing. And so I'm opening one, and I'm just going to do a really quick process here. So maybe I'll take the basic and I'd like to bring up the dehaze to make that stand out a little more. Maybe bring up the clarity texture to make that really sparkle. Maybe I'll take the detail, and I'm just going to go overboard with this just so you can see what I'm looking to do. And maybe I'll take the masking and clean that up just a little bit. And let's do something really radical. This is a cold scene, so maybe I'd like to make this more on the blue side. And I will put it just like that. All right. Gee, be nice to put some vignetting in this too, wouldn't it? So we'll just do that. And maybe I'll even do a quick crop here. Maybe I'll do this as a 16 by 9, just for television, right? There we go. Maybe I'll crop in just a little bit. Now, I've got that just the way I want it. And so I'm just going to say done. Now, how long did that take me to process that file? Not too long, right? Now, I'd like to do the same thing for this one, and this one, and this one. So I've done the work. So if I come back to this one and simply say develop settings, and I can say copy the settings, now I can choose which images I would like to process. And if I right click, I can go back to develop settings and say paste settings. What settings do you want to paste? Well, I did crop this, and I didn't do any healing or masking, and I didn't do any geometry, but everything else looks good. So I'll say okay and watch this. 1, 2, 3. Now, if I look at this, there's the first one, and tell me if that's not the same treatment, and that's the same treatment, and that's the same treatment. So often, I get the message from people that they don't have time to edit their photos. And I get that. I understand that. It takes a while to edit a photo. And if you've got a number of photos like this, that could take a long time. But why not put all the energy into doing one, and if you can, apply it to all the others? Now, here's why you want to set your white balance so you're not having to go and change it for each one. And this is where it's good to keep the exposure locked from one to another, so everything you process on one, it'll apply to the others. Oh, and by the way, did I tell you, once I get these all done, I can go up here to Tools, go to Photoshop, Image Processor, and I can make them all ready for HDTV. So there's a really quick way to process images. Is that going to make your raw processing go a little faster? So we started with Scrubbies. We talked about tools that use content aware. We talked about sky replacement right up front. We did perspective crop. That's kind of a fun one. Bridge batch processing, just the couple that I can't live without. Layer style copy and paste. That's where we copied the stroke and the drop shadows and we applied it to everything. And then we opened some JPEGs into ACR. So there's 5+ popular tools that I use frequently in Photoshop. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again on Friday Night Photoshop.